It's the Blue Boat Cafe, a little bit wonkish, a whole lot of fun. I'm David Schellenberg along with Rachel Wigster in Canada's capital of Ottawa. Hello, Rachel.
Hello, David.
How are things over in your neighborhood?
What, 10 minutes away from you?
Yes, in a big blue sky today.
It is sunny today. It's sunny, but it's what, sub-zero? Oh, that's in Celsius.
In Celsius, which is the way most of the world is, to be fair.
Yeah, it's true, but that would make it about, 30 degrees Fahrenheit, I think, something like that today.
Beautiful day. Who's with us today, Rachel?
Today, we have Dan Burkhuff from Veterans for Responsible Leadership, and I'm excited to hear his origin story and and have a conversation. Hello, Dan.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for having me, guys. I'm excited to be here.
Welcome. So we have connected sort of through 2 degrees of separation through another DA member. And so we haven't actually had much of a conversation at all. So we'd like to hear everything about what you're working on and how you started doing it.
But first, Dan, what part of the world are you in?
So I'm in Vermont, not too far from you guys. We're about half an hour from the border. So more in the Quebec, Montreal sort of axis of Canadian goodness. But we're not that far from a good poutine stand.
Are you in the beautiful little rolling hills section of Vermont?
That's all of Vermont.
I know.
Yeah, it's kind of all of it. Yeah.
Yeah, Vermont's a beautiful state, and poutine has not leaked across the border. Is that what you're telling us?
What,
Impinged.
You want the good stuff, you got to get the authentic stuff north of the border.
That's true. So now tell us about Veterans for Responsible Leadership and how you got there.
Sure, absolutely. So Veterans for Responsible Leadership is an organization that I started back in 2017. So my background is I was a New England kid, went to the Naval Academy, the U.S. Naval Academy, and graduated in 2001.
Right.
And after that, spent about 7 years on active duty as a SEAL with the SEAL teams. Mostly stationed down in Virginia, and this was in 01 to like 08. So went to all the usual places people go. Got out and used my GI Bill to go to medical school.
Oh, wow.
And did that down in Boston, and then went out to New Mexico. And so I was in Albuquerque for about 4 years doing my residency in emergency medicine. And I'm an emergency medicine physician now.
Wow.
Here in Vermont. And while I was out there, the strangest thing happened. You guys wouldn't believe this, that in 2016, Donald Trump was elected president, and
we noticed that here.
Did not care for that. So
no.
The idea of VFRL was, well, we started as a Facebook group, and it really was just, I had, at the time I had 2 daughters. I have 3 daughters now, and my initial distaste for Trump was the Access Hollywood tape and,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff. And I thought he was going to be a terrible president. Turned out he was much worse than I had imagined. But going into 2017, I wanted to do something. And so we started this Facebook group. It was myself, a handful of other Naval Academy folks, and a handful of guys from the SEAL teams that I knew. And, in the beginning, it was nothing more than sharing news articles and the same stuff that happens on all Facebook groups, right? Mm-hmm. We decided to actually incorporate as a veterans organization. So we're what's called a 501c19, which is a veterans organization. And then underneath that, we have a super PAC, which is a 527 super PAC. And so we support and oppose candidates for office that we feel are candidates we oppose are people we feel who don't honor, the military and veterans and have no kind of understanding of that, and people who are a threat to the Constitution. People we support are people that, we feel are in keeping with the values that, we hold dear as veterans and former members of the military. So, to give you an example, people we've supported in the past, Mikey Sherrill down in New Jersey. We went really big on supporting Elaine Luria in 22 in her election down in Virginia. Abby Spanberger, Alyssa Slotkin, kind of a lot of sort of moderate Democrats with strong national security credentials are kind of our sweet spot. And then opposing folks who, we feel, in particular veterans of military service who have kind of gone full MAGA. And then, of course, supporting President Biden against Donald Trump. In 2020, we had created a bunch of ads, anti-Trump ads, essentially, that were specifically targeting veterans, and we aired them in some states that at the time seemed like the right states to be in. So we had Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Florida. The electoral map this time around, I think, looks a little bit different. And for example, Ohio and Florida, I think, are effectively out of reach of Democrats. I do think that there's a way in which we win Georgia, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan. Those are kind of the areas that we're most focused on. Kind of a sweet spot for us is a place with a lot of veterans. Georgia, for example, is kind of my favorite example. Georgia, we've got a combination of a large number of military bases. There's Army bases, there's Navy bases, and there's a lot of people, a lot of veterans, just like any job, right? You tend to kind of stay, when you retire, you tend to kind of stay near where you worked. So there's a ton of veterans in Georgia. Has the highest percentage of African-American veterans, has the highest percentage of female veterans, and the highest percentage of African-American female veterans. And that's a really, that's a great sort of demographic for us to target veterans and veteran adjacent folks in a state that's absolutely critical.
Wow, that's really interesting.
I suspect I know the answer to this already, but I'll let you say it. So when you say Biden understands the military, what can you expand on that a little bit? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, sure. So, Biden didn't serve, right? He's not a veteran, but he had a son who did. And yes, Beau Biden was a JAG, right? So he wasn't, in the foxhole or standing, gate guard. But I mean, the guy did go to Iraq. He served honorably. He, took risks. I'm sure he had to do a convoy on Route Irish, just like everybody. And the thing that, Joe Biden understands that Donald Trump doesn't is, he understands that we're not, suckers and losers, right? Like the people who go into the military in an all volunteer military, are doing it because they want to be exceptional, because they want to serve. We always constantly harp on the fact that service is a privilege. You're privileged to wear the uniform of your country. You're privileged to take an oath to the Constitution. And Donald Trump does not understand that. With him, with his little reptile lizard brain, everything's transactional. What's in it for me, right? And so, a 19-year-old who joins the military and is standing, as a gate guard in Sangin, Afghanistan, or Fallujah, Iraq, or in Syria. Of course, Trump doesn't get that because he said this. He said what's in it for them, right? He does not understand that. And he doesn't understand not having kind of a selfish, sort of narcissistic worldview. And the military fundamentally is an honor culture, right? You don't get people to dive on a hand grenade to save their friends or to run out under fire and drag someone back to safety unless they're doing it because they believe that it's the honorable thing to do, that they have a duty to do it. Mm-hmm. And I mean, if there's one word that Donald Trump understands less than anything else, I would say it's duty. Like he does not understand that we have obligations to things greater than ourselves. And, that's why he's anathema to folks who understand how the military works. He's completely in over his head. I mean, even if you excluded all the, sort of harebrained ideas he has, things like let's assassinate foreign leaders, let's use the 82nd Airborne to put down domestic protests in Washington, D.C., right? Even if you exclude all of that, if you exclude the, I'm going to keep top secret documents in Mar-a-Lago in my shower. Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you forget about all that stuff, which is completely disqualifying, he fundamentally is unfit to lead because he doesn't understand how to lead men and women who are in service of something greater than themselves.
I'm so glad you mentioned honor because I hadn't thought of that in terms of the military, and it's brilliantly, illuminating. But I also, in thinking about how we got into the mess we are now, how we ended up electing Trump and all the damage that he's done, it seems to me that the biggest flaw in the way the founders set up our democracy is that they assumed people elected to office would be people of honor. And they didn't put any guardrails in to ensure that, honor, you respect honor because it's honor. You don't need guardrails for that, but apparently we do.
No, absolutely. I think if you look at Trump and the way that Trump views the world, he is incapable of understanding of even, I guess he could potentially contemplate it, but, he sees anyone who's doing something that's not narrowly in their self-interest as a sucker, right?
Yeah, chump.
He's a three-card Monty dealer, right? He doesn't get it. And it brings up an interesting point because when I started VFRL back in 2017, and Trump was just coming in, and it wasn't apparent how bad it was going to get at that point. Again, I thought he was going to be a crappy president, but I didn't realize that he was going to attempt to destroy the country. Right. Mm-hmm. And when he came in, a fundamental assumption, and this was a wrong assumption. This was an assumption we made at VFRL that was incorrect, which was that all we had to do was kind of point out, the emperor has no clothes, and that would sort of back various Republicans, into a corner, right? Dan Crenshaw, right, who I didn't know in the SEAL teams, is a guy, if you don't know who he is, he's a Republican congressman. He used to be a SEAL, got injured in Afghanistan, and, kind of campaigned on this idea of, doing the right thing and let's be, honorable and stuff like that. And so VFRL, the original idea was, we're just going to point out, we're going to be like, hey, how can you support this guy that, there's going to be a bridge too far. Yes. That all the Republicans are going to kind of turn their back and, tell this guy to pound sand. Right. And that never happened.
Right.
With a couple exceptions. Right. You've got the Liz Cheneys and the Adam Kinzingers who are no longer serving. So initially we were like, we'd support Republicans, sure. Maybe, I don't agree with them on, whatever tax policy or something like that. But,
some have honor.
Exactly. If they're doing the right thing on Trump, we'd support them. And there are none left.
Exactly.
They're all gone.
Exactly.
So if you're a small d Democrat, if you're committed to democracy, you have to be, I mean, you're a big D Democrat at this point. We're a single issue organization, which is, a commitment to small d democracy. And we will help anyone who furthers that goal and oppose anyone who, is detrimental to it. And so, practically speaking, that is Democrats at this point, big D Democrats. So it was my sort of political education over the last 6.5 years. A big, kind of come to Jesus moment for me was realizing that, we're in a place where you've got to pick a side. And you can't sort of have your cake and eat it too, and be like, we're gonna appeal to sort of higher virtue. It's like these people just need to be straight up outvoted. That's what needs to happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's really interesting, like the whole George Santos thing over the past couple of weeks, where they kicked him out for being accused of things, not found guilty as of this recording, but just being accused of things, compared to Trump, who has actually been found guilty. And he's fine. He can stick around. Like, there is something very weird in the Republicans at the moment.
Yeah, the Santos thing's, my theory about the Santos thing is it's sort of a dry run, and it also sort of establishes a precedent, right? So, if you want to defend the indefensible, which is the destruction of peaceful transfer of power and talking about top secret war plans with Australian billionaires at Mar-a-Lago, right? Like, if you want to defend that, what you have to do is you have to be, you have to come up with some sort of explanation as to why you're defending it. And Santos, right? If you look at the people who supported Santos, who voted against kicking him out of Congress, it was all the super MAGA people, right? There were 100 and something Republicans who voted to expel him, and that's great. But there were, I forget off the top of my head how many Republicans voted to retain him in Congress.
Yeah, a fair amount did. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and so. And those people, this is just a warm up for Trump, right? They're setting the precedent. So over the summer, when Donald Trump is on trial for, threatening the peaceful transfer of power, when he's on trial for trying to, overturn the election in Georgia, when he's on trial for 100%, dead as a doornail, guilty, stealing top secret, and not returning them when he was told to. They want to be able to say, well, he's not convicted yet. Right. So this was just a political move. This was just, hey, let's, this is our chance to be like, well, if you're not convicted, you're still good to go and you can still participate in politics. It was all just a warm up for Trump.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it. It's interesting that the Democrats have somehow or other become like the law and order party, which is not the way I grew up looking at the differences between these two groups.
Well, the Republicans have always positioned themselves that way, but
yeah, no, it's true. I mean, there's certainly a wanting to have one's cake and eat it too on the part of the Republicans, right? Like, they want to be, tough on crime, right? And throw people in jail and throw people in prison, and but if you really look at Biden's budget puts more police officers on the street, right? There are. I have, as I'm sure many Democrats do, there are occasionally frustrations I have with the Democrat Party. And, there are certain things that the Democrats should just own.
Yeah.
Right. And, national security is one of them. Right. And the Democrats need to make the argument to the American people that, hey, we're the ones who stood up to Putin. Ukraine is important. Yes. Right.
Yes.
We're making sure that the Ukrainians have the weapons they need to stop a dictator who is on the march in Europe. And, they need to own national security. I mean, I think Biden's done what's going on in Israel and Gaza is terrible. It's a humanitarian disaster.
Yeah.
But in terms of preventing a larger war, in terms of preventing Hezbollah from getting involved, in terms of preventing Iran from directly getting involved,
Yeah.
the diplomacy that's going on now, sort of behind the scenes, is when the books come out in 20 years, I'll be first in line to read them because there's a major effort by the Biden administration to, keep the wheels on the bus and to try to limit this conflict. And that's something that they need to own. They need to be like, hey, this was going to get much, much worse. And, we're doing okay. We're trying to allow Israel to have their right to exist, to destroy Hamas. And at the same time, Israel needs to understand that they can't just run amok and, kill civilians. So it's a difficult task, but, the Republicans are just like, let's, JD Vance is just like, let's let the Russians steamroll Ukraine and it's not responsible foreign policy.
No. Right. Yeah. I'm just thinking about which direction to go because there are so many issues the Democrats should own. It's historically, I read over and over and over again, fiscally responsible, that we do much better economically when the Democrats are in charge.
Yeah, I think there's and the economy is doing well right now, but people aren't feeling it.
People aren't feeling it
because of inflation, right? And so Biden needs to get out there and, he needs to be in places like Michigan, right? And talking about, what's going on, what he's doing to, bring jobs to, places like Michigan and preserve the jobs that are there. And I anticipate that will come as the campaign heats up, right?
Right.
It's still early. There's a lot of game left to play. But, that's the big issue. Where the Republicans are strong right now, in terms of public perception, I'm not talking about their literal policies.
What policies?
Yeah. Where people think that the Republicans are doing a better job or going to do a better job are border security, crime, and the economy. And those are sort of the big three issues that they're trying, they're putting in all their talking points. And so when they get their daily emails, and Republicans are much more disciplined than Democrats as far as messaging goes. They're much better at sticking to their talking points. Excuse me. And, those are the three issues that they're hammering on. And it's going to take a lot, I think, it's going to take effort by the Biden campaign and the Democrat Party to actually get out and be like, hey, this is kind of bullshit, right? Like they're saying they're better on the economy, but we're the ones who put the wheels back on the bus after COVID.
Yeah.
So, there's some messaging that needs to be done for sure.
Agreed. So tell us more about veterans, and not just veterans, the military. I sort of have two thoughts in mind. One is that there's a sort of inherited perception for many people that the military is all Republican and all conservative. And I know that's not true, so I'd be interested in your perspective. But I'm also thinking about, oh dear, it disappeared on me. We'll start there then.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So, I've given a lot of thought to this over the years, and a couple of points. So the first thing I would say is that in general, the military skews conservative. And so if you look historically at veterans and, it's tough to poll people on active duty, but occasionally it does help or it does happen. And so if you look at data it really started with Reagan. Reagan, Soviet Union, Cold War, all that kind of stuff. They really, for I guess, a couple generations now, solidified, kind of this perception that the Republican Party was stronger on national defense. And so if you look at polls from the 90s and the 2000s and things like that, it was about 75-25 Republican versus Democrat when you look at military folks.
Interesting.
Here's the crazy part. With Trump, it's about 50-50. And so what that shows is that Donald Trump is uniquely bad and lost almost a third of the support of veterans, right? So, people are like, well, most veterans support Trump. And it's kind of like, maybe it's right around 50-50, and it depends what branch of service and all that stuff. So Trump, took it from 75 to 50 amongst all comers with veterans. And that is, kind of unprecedented. And that's directly what VFRL is all about, right? Because we realize this guy is not one of us. This guy, he can never pretend to be one of us. He's incapable of even thinking of, like us. And people see that. And so, the Democrats historically, I think, have been sort of wishy-washy when it comes to the military and the national defense. And that, in a large part is kind of rooted in Vietnam and the draft and things like that.
Right.
And having an all-volunteer military, when we switched from the draft to an all-volunteer military, that had downstream consequences that, we're still, not just we're actively like working through the downstream consequences of having an all-volunteer military. And so it's one of the things that happened when we switched from a draft, right?
Yeah.
So 1973, Congress gets rid of the draft, which is objectively a good thing, right? It, when you're balancing, should we have conscription or not? Ripping some kid out of high school in North Dakota who never wanted to be in the military and sending him off to a rice paddy, to get shot at.
Yeah.
We shouldn't do that if we can get people to volunteer to do it.
It's not going to end well, no.
It's not going to end well. And it causes, resentment and, the Vietnam veterans who came home. I mean, you hear these stories of mistreatment and public perception of them was very different.
Yes.
And when you switch to this all-volunteer force, well, okay, we're going to have an all-volunteer force. We're going to get people to join. So that same problem of how do you get someone to join the military and be willing to go to, that rice paddy and get shot at, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you do that? And so, there's tangible ways to do it. You offer them the GI Bill, you raise the pay, you say, hey, be all you can be and come join the Army and, or join the Navy and see the world. And, you're going to go, you're a kid and you're going to go on a ship and you're going to sail the Mediterranean or the Western Pacific, and you're going to, your mind's going to be blown. Right. And then 9/11 happens, and all of a sudden people are like, I'm kind of like not that into sailing the world, that I'm willing to sort of join during a time of conflict when people are coming home in body bags.
Yeah.
And the messaging became different. So the messaging, instead of like, hey, get a couple bucks for college, the messaging became, if you join, you are special, right? Like, you are a special person, and what you're doing is special, and you're going to be special forever. And, you're a warrior and Sparta and all this stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And I mean, basically it's advertising, right? And so that advertising worked in getting people to, raise their right hand and join the Marine Corps, and, climb up I don't know if you guys recall the Marine Corps commercials with the They're kind of cheesy, really. It's like some kids like climbing up a mountain to fight a dragon on the top of it, like that.
I remember that. Yes, we saw them on football games.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was deliberate. It was like, how do we get people to join the military in a time of war without a draft? And the way you do it is to make them feel special and to make them feel like they're doing something that is hard and unique, and they're going to be heroes and all that kind of stuff. And lo and behold, it turns out that leads to, sort of a bunch of downstream consequences. So one thing it does is you get these people who come out of the military who've been told that they're special for, I don't know, a 3-year enlistment or 20 years, or 30 years. And now they're out of the military, and you've got veterans who are, I hate it when people are like, thank you for your service. It's so sort of cheesy and insincere, but you have veterans who get used to being told that they're, heroes in Sparta and all this kind of stuff. And some of them are, right? But I promise you that not everyone who served in uniform is some big war hero. It's just not true. And the other consequence of telling people that they're special is you get people who kind of want to be special too, but maybe don't want to really join the military. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do the next best thing, and I'm going to buy an AR-15 and some body armor, and I'm going to participate in gun culture and sort of this this kind of toxic masculinity, that you hear about, right? And so I think that we haven't thought, again, on balance, should we have a draft? Of course not. But we have to be real about, the consequences of not having a draft, which are that we're selling people on military service, and there's millions and millions of dollars being spent on selling people on military service. And one of the consequences of that is that people like guns, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, that's certainly an interesting theory that I haven't heard before. And I wondered, does that then interconnect back around to the amount of mass shootings that we see in the United States?
Or January 6th.
Yeah, and so, one at a time. I mean, certainly the guns correlate with the mass shooting.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But January 6th too, the people on January 6th, the thing that makes it tough, right, is like those people on January 6th. Now, I think they were wrong. I think they were completely deluded. I think they're idiots, but they were convinced. And I truly think they believe that they were doing something special and, saving the country and all that sort of stuff. So they are just as committed to their version of what America is as I am. So those people need to be outvoted. There's no other way around it. We just have to win elections. And, but yeah, I mean, definitely the people who, stormed the Capitol on January 6th and thought they were starting a civil war were trying to feel special. They were trying to feel important. They were trying to, if you listen to some of the audio, they think that they're, Trump is tweeting a bunch of crap about, and people are yelling, Trump tweeted this, Trump, he thinks we're doing a great thing. And, to us, that sounds insane, but they believed it. And so how do you counter that? And maybe some of those people will sort of see the error of their ways, but I'm of the mindset, plenty of them are going to be this way forever, and we just need to keep outvoting them every election and and make sure they don't get back into power. Because if they do, if Donald Trump wins this election, Donald Trump is not leaving office again.
I think
he learned he learned when he leaves office, he gets charged with crimes. That's what he learned, right? Like, I mean, yeah, I mean, of course he should be charged with those crimes, but Donald Trump's takeaway from what happened in 2020 is if I voluntarily give up power, I can go to prison. And so he is a desperate man, and he's going to do desperate things to stay in power. I'm absolutely convinced of that.
Oh, he's not making any secret of the fact that he's going to turn the government and the military and the police force against the people. It's and they're not even trying to hide the plans. It's
No, not
scary.
not at all. You know, I mean, he's saying literally, you know, he posts literally on Truth Social that he's going to overturn parts of the Constitution that, you know, or he runs afoul of, or what have you. And he, you know, I will say this about Trump, like he doesn't really bluff that much. Like he tries to do the insane shit that he thinks he can get away with. And so, you know, he goes until someone stops him. And
I've noticed that too. Yeah. If you actually listen to his speeches, he spells out every single thing he's going to say.
totally,
Yeah. He's going to do
you know,
it.
he's not subtle, right? He's not like, you know, there's no bait and switch with Trump. Trump is going to, you know, he says he's going to overturn the Constitution. He's probably going to try to do that. He says that he is going to, you know, there've been points where he said things like, you know, to the Proud Boys, you know, stand back and stand by, and you know, we're going to deputize these guys. And I don't want to live in an America where, you know, the Proud Boys have been deputized with federal authority, right? Like these are real things that Donald Trump says he's going to do, and all of his crazy plans that he has said he's going to do, he's at least tried to initiate them. I mean, you know, think back to 2017. He came in saying he was going to ban Muslims from entering the country, and he did.
Yes.
You know, and
Yeah.
then it was overturned, right? He went until he was stopped. So, if we prevent him from being reelected, that is, you know, the political fight of our lifetimes. I can't imagine an election in my lifetime that's more important than this one. I thought 2020 would be
I know.
the end of it, right? But he
We
came
all
back,
thought
he's like,
2020 was, yeah.
yeah, it's like he's like Freddy Krueger or something. So,
Well, no, he's not. At least Donald Trump is old and unhealthy. So you know, we have that on our side. So I guess the question just becomes, why do you think he's leading in the polls then? Why does he maintain this level of popularity when even supporters of Trump know that he's not telling the truth?
yeah, there's a couple factors there, right? Like there are the true believers, right? Like if you look at people who vote for Trump, they're the MAGA true believers, you know, the people who ascribe to you know, Stephen Miller's plans and want to you know, have essentially like a Caucasian Christian state, right? Like that's his base. We never convince them.
Right.
They're going to do what they're going to do.
And
right?
yet
So-
they know Trump doesn't believe in God. They know Trump is pro-abortion. He's paid for abortions in the past. Like, so some of these fundamental things that you would think the MAGA people have in their core is not at all what he is.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think they see him as a
means to an end.
yeah, like he's useful to them, right? And so, you know, those people are not going to be swayed. And then you've got people who vote for Trump, and I'm sure y'all know people like this. I know a bunch of people like this. Some I consider friends who, you know, they're like, well, I just can't vote for a Democrat. And, you know, I think that the Republicans have done such a good job of, you know, the Democratic Party the tent is so broad, right? Like,
Yeah.
what is a Democrat?
Yeah.
Is it Joe Manchin? Is it Elizabeth Warren? Right?
Yeah.
It's both of those, you know? And so we have the Republicans are really good at making straw man arguments and finding the most ridiculous, progressive, kind of Bernie Sanders-esque position, and then saying, "Hey, this is all of them," and we don't do as good of a job kind of sort of triangulating that and be like, no, there's a difference between, I mean, there's a difference between Joe Biden and AOC, right? They
Oh,
do
yes.
not have,
Yes, pretty much, yeah.
they do not have the same views on issues. And the Republicans are good at like just being like, hey, if you vote for Biden, you're going to get AOC, right? And
Yeah.
so that's just something they're better at. Their tent is smaller, so their messaging is tighter, and they're great at straw man arguments. And so that appeals to people. And that cohort of people who reluctantly are going to vote for Trump, so there are Republicans who are going to vote for Nikki Haley and then turn around and vote for Trump, right? And so those, they get it. Those people get it. They're like, man, Nikki Haley would be so much better on so many levels. And then she's going to lose. And in November of next year, they're going to pull the ballot for the lever for Trump, right? So that's a tough thing to defeat, is somebody who is just so committed to partisanship that they're not looking at kind of the individual candidates. But it's necessary, and at a minimum, we need to get people to stay home on the Republican side, right? Yeah. Like, just, all right, you're not going to vote for Biden, fine. Just stay home.
Just stay home. That's right.
I mean, it sounds cynical, but this is how the game is played, right? Like,
Yep, definitely.
driving turnout down on the other side is something that you can do with contrast ads and be like, look, is this you? Is this really you? Are you really going to go? Are you really going to stand in line to vote for this guy who wants to overturn the Constitution? I mean, we have to make that argument.
Yeah. So it is a good thing that it is still, last we heard, a secret ballot, that some people may go in and just pull a different lever when it comes to that moment where they're all by themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what kind of response do you get from veterans?
Oh, it varies. So the people who are, we're on the small side of veterans groups. We've got about 8,000 members. I think that'll go up quite a bit in coming months as 2024 rolls around. And the people who get it, they love what we're doing, because what we're doing is out of a sense of duty, and it's not selfish. I don't get paid to be the president of VFRL. I don't get anything if Joe Biden is elected, and neither do any of our members, right? We're giving up time out of busy lives to try to preserve our country for our children. And so people who understand that our oath as members of the military was to a founding document, and not to some 1950s version of America, they love what we're doing, and they want to help, and they want to come aboard. There are people who are who served in the military. Some people I served with in the SEAL teams, who objectively could only be described as fascist. And those people we're never going to convince. They just have to be outvoted. So, I think one thing about Democrats that can be frustrating is we kind of always think that we can talk our way. We can if we win the argument, if we argue well enough, we're going to convince the other side. And I'm of the mindset that what is needed is to beat the other side.
Yeah.
No, that's a very good point, because we keep thinking we've got good arguments against Trump, and then he keeps coming back.
Yeah,
he's like, yeah, he just, he's like the groundhog on Caddyshack.
So how did you connect with DA?
So we actually, our executive director, so our one paid employee, Abby, she is our executive director at VFRL, and she had kind of heard about some of the things that y'all had been doing. And the expat community, you guys are important. I'm sure you know that, and I know
we do.
We're special, is the way we think of ourselves.
Yeah. So, what you guys are doing is really important. And, I was looking this up a little bit before, we kind of came on the air, but I saw 55,000 veterans living overseas.
Wow.
So,
yeah.
scattered across the globe. So, that's a ton of people who need to make sure they mail in their ballots.
That's right.
And they're mostly overseas because of love. As we talk to them as part of our members, they went somewhere in the world, they met somebody, and they decided to stay there. Which is
work, school, and love seem to be the main reasons, and love has won hands down every time we've had the conversations. They might have gone overseas for school or for the military, and then they fall in love with somebody, and there they are. But it's interesting too, because and that was the thought that escaped me a little earlier. When we're watching the voting returns, you see the votes coming in from the states, but there's also the quote military vote, and in fact that includes many civilians, which but it's always reported, or often reported, as the military vote instead of the overseas vote, which I always find interesting. So it may actually look more democratic than the military itself is, but there are a lot of civilians included in it.
Yeah, I voted by absentee ballot once when I was in Iraq. Actually, maybe I voted twice. Because I think in 2004 and 2008, I voted. I think I was overseas for both those elections, and voted by absentee ballot. It's been around since the Civil War. It's something we do. Yeah.
And unique. No other country, but no other country does it the way the United States does. Like us as Canadians, if this situation was reversed, I wouldn't be able to be living in the United States and voting in Canadian elections the way that this works.
Really? I did not. You learn something new every day. I did not know that.
No, it's very quite a surprise, the amount of work that the United States does go through to make sure that everybody can vote.
Mm-hmm.
Well, also the legislation that protects our vote as voters outside the country, the UOCAVA Act, as I understand it, that was put in place specifically to protect the military vote, but we civilians benefit from it.
Mm-hmm. And that was a strong sort of messaging point in 2020 was, you recall on election night, Trump declared victory and said, I won. And, and then the votes kind of kept coming. Right. And so the messaging, the messaging was like, oh, you're going to throw away, some kid's vote in Syria.
Yeah.
Right? Is that what you want to do? And that's effective messaging.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of effective messaging, should we talk about the Lincoln Project ads?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, you're a TV star.
Yeah, you went viral apparently.
Yeah, so the connection with the Lincoln Project back in 2020 was a guy named Stuart Stevens, who is also a Vermonter, but was Mitt Romney's chief strategist. He had worked for Bush W as well in 2004 and I think 2000. But his main bona fides was working as Romney's chief strategist in 2012, and then Stuart's a really good guy, like very very forthright about his kind of belief that he was mistaken in his younger days, and he kind of came out as a really a never Trump guy right from the get-go. And even when the 2016 primary was still going on, there are old recordings of Stewart doing TV hits and telling Chris Christie and Ted Cruz, like, ask him like a basic question about the Constitution, and insist that he answer it. And Stewart was and he still works for Project Lincoln, and so Stewart and I did those ads up here in Vermont, and the messenger matters, right? And so the reason those ads were effective is because the messenger matters. And so, the perfect messenger for, a similar effect now, right? It can't be me anymore, because, everyone knows I'm a libtard or whatever. So, the perfect messenger now would be somebody who voted for Trump twice, and now is of the mindset, they were so turned off by January 6th and the top secret documents and all that kind of stuff. They're like, look, this is ridiculous. Like, I can't support this guy anymore. Yeah. You're not going to boil the ocean. You're not going to get everyone to see it your way, but you're not trying to. We're trying to shave off, 10,000, 20,000 votes in Michigan. We're trying to shave off 10,000, 20,000 votes in Georgia. And that's something that can be done if you have the right messenger saying, what is true, right? And what is true is that Donald Trump is a charlatan who's completely incapable of being the leader of this country. And having if anyone is sort of in those shoes and, they're having cold feet about Trump and you happen to be listening, I'd encourage you to do your duty to your country, do your duty as a citizen, and speak out and say that this is, I was Trump for, 2 elections or 1 election or whatever it is, and I can't do it anymore. This guy, is a threat to our way of life and a threat to America.
Yeah, definitely. Wow.
Yeah. Lots to think about.
Lots to think about. Yeah. Is there anything you haven't shared with us that you'd like to?
Oh my gosh. Well, I got to plug VFRL for a minute. So
absolutely.
Please check us out. It's Veterans for Responsible Leadership. We are at vfrl.org is our website. And, we'd love to hear from you. We answer our emails, and we love to hear thoughts from folks, especially veterans living overseas. So please reach out and check us out. And we're going to be focused on hitting Donald Trump and attacking him, starting hopefully with the New Hampshire primary in a month or so. And making the argument that this guy's unfit. So please, check us out and share the stuff we're putting out if you're so inspired. But this is an all hands on deck kind of thing. I'm so hopeful in 2028 I can take a nap during the election, but 2024
naps are great.
2024 is not the time for that, not yet. So yeah.
No sleep from now until the end of the election.
Oh, we got work to do.
Yep. Well, thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. That was fun.
Oh, thanks so much for joining us. It was really thought-provoking and very interesting, and good luck to us all.
Yeah.
All right. I'm Rachel Oigster with David Schellenberg in Ottawa, Canada. Thank you for listening to Democrats Abroad, the Blue Vote Cafe.